This is the man with no remorse, Nate Dowdy, on the Sports Talkline Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. This is a public service announcement. The NFL Draft Talk with the Jersey Shore Giant. Wait, I guess they're still called New York, with Van, and that's not reference to the vehicle he circles brothels with. Here is the man himself.
It's great to be here. And of course, we are here on the NFL Draft Talk show with Connor Livesay, the seniors NFL draft analyst for Sports Talkline, and a man who definitely has the largest collection of Chia Pets anyone has ever seen. Connor, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys tonight?
On Notre Dame Paradise.
We're fired up here. We got a full panel. We're talking New York Giants draft, Jersey Shore Giants draft. Connor, let's just dive right into the pool. And not the shallow end. Dive right into the deep end, because the NFL draft for the New York Giants is all about pick number one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, pick number 6, but yeah, first pick.
There you go.
Even if they would have had the first overall pick, they're probably taking the same guy. They took it 6 and 1. They fell in love with Daniel Jones throughout this process. Saw him as a Eli Manning clone, and is a NFL evaluator.
Okay, now hold on. Eli Manning clone. Are you saying that the Dallas Cowboys, even after Jones takes over, are guaranteed 1 to 2 interceptions a game for no reason why?
Yeah, very similar. Daniel's a lot more athletic. Pocket mobility is a lot better than what Eli Manning is, but a guy who just doesn't have that strong arm, doesn't have the instincts as a passer, the consistent accuracy, the consistent arm talent to make the NFL throws consistently. That's kind of what you're getting in Daniel Jones. More of a project, and taking a project in the top, 6 picks is just a questionable decision for a franchise that's lacked that quarterback.
I'm curious, does he have the same forehead as Eli Manning?
They literally almost look identical. They have the same haircut, have the same smile. It's weirdly similar. It's very weird how similar those two guys are. They actually train together in the off season, so it's just a strange resemblance between the two.
Well, yeah, and they have the same quarterback guru as well, correct? And he is the head coach at Duke. And he was the guy that both of the Mannings, Peyton and Eli, they look at as their QB guru. And he's been in the mix for a while. And Gettleman and the Giants have been looking at this guy for a while. But that's not really what's important here. What's important here is pick 6 of the first round, Connor. That's what we're talking about. A lot of guys, a lot of pundits, most pundits had this guy available a lot later, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, he was always going to go in the first at some point because of the need of quarterback and how important that position is. But, most people graded him outside of the top. A lot of people had him inside the top 75, but there was a lot of people who had him outside of the top 100 as well. He was like the 151st player or something on my board. So, I mean, that's just a massive, massive reach. And again, he could end up being a solid – I don't think he's ever going to be a top 10, 12, 15 quarterback in the NFL, but I guess his potential, his ceiling is you hope he could be a similar player to what Eli Manning is now in his career. At one point, Eli Manning was a solid quarterback, someone who could play in the top half of the league. But just his age, his lack of athleticism has caught up to him, and it's really hurt him over the last few years. Daniel Jones in the pocket is going to be a similar player that's going to miss those wide open throws at times. He's going to make those bonehead interceptions, but he'll be able to move the chains here and there and make a few nice plays. But he's going to need a really, really good supporting cast around him to make that happen.
Well, personally, I've had enough of Stephen Vanover flapping his damn gums over there. Connor, I want one thing. You're responsible for turning around the New York Football Giants. If you were in David Gettleman's position and you were making the pick right here, who do you take? Or actually, let me put it this way, because I have a feeling just by hearing you speak, you would have taken someone else at 6. Who would have been your top 3 picks at number 6 had you been put in the same situation?
I mean, I wasn't quite as high on Dwayne Haskins as a lot of other people, but I would have loved that pick a lot more than Daniel Jones, because I think he's a more talented quarterback. He's a guy who can make all the throws from the pocket. He's only a 1-year starter, so he's still got a lot more room to groom as a developmental quarterback. But I think he's more pro ready Not the athlete that Daniel Jones is, but he's a guy who can make all the throws in, out of the pockets. That's his big question with Dwayne Haskins, was being able to get out of the pocket and make some of those throws while running left, running right. So those are some questions. But if you're looking for a guy who can come in, Kyler Murray obviously went number 1. You're going to need that quarterback. I think that number 6 pick needed to be a quarterback. But I would have went Dwayne Haskins, or I would have tried to trade back. I know they have 3 first-round picks, but I would have tried to trade back and possibly even gotten one of those guys a little bit later in the draft as well, while picking up another first or second-round pick. That team has so many holes in it on the offensive side of the ball and defensive side of the ball. So Dwayne Haskins would have been my number 1 pick for the Giants.
Right.
But I also would have looked at some of those edge rushers as well. Brian Burns was still available. They lost Olivier Vernon in free agency. A very slippery style of edge rusher that plays with great bend, flexibility, speed, burst, kind of has all the explosive numbers that you look for. He doesn't have that size that you would hope for, but he makes up for that with his speed and his explosiveness. And then, as another position at number 6 that you could have looked at is another one of those defensive linemen. You had so many guys. Clelin Ferrell went 4 to the Raiders. He was kind of a reach as well for Oakland. So you look at some of those defensive linemen that were still around, the Brian Burns, the Josh Allens. And again, I know it's not the biggest need as normal, but one of those offensive linemen as well, one of the tackles that can come in and play guard. That offensive line still isn't great for New York. So I probably would have went, Dwayne Haskins, Brian Burns, Josh Allen, kind of piggyback those two together, and then looked at one of those offensive linemen, Jonah Williams. I know Jawan Taylor went in the second round, but he was a guy I liked a lot. So one of those two guys as well.
All right. Well, hey, Connor, all right, just look at it another way. Now, a lot of people are saying that, Daniel Jones today versus Haskins or anybody else, we get your point. What we're saying is that Daniel Jones, after a year or maybe a year and a half, a season and a half, sitting on the bench, coming in, I'm not saying he's Mahomes. What I'm saying is he's going to really benefit. He's a guy that has not had talent around him at the collegiate level, and that's the truth. I mean, he's at Duke. Come on. How good can he be? We understand what his floor is. What is his ceiling?
I mean, I think another concern with me is you have, I know you were talking about a guy that, played at Duke, didn't have the talent around him, but he wasn't able to elevate his team at all in those scenarios. They weren't a good offensive football team, and you're playing Duke. You're at Duke, so it's not like you're playing Alabama, Clemson defenses every week. You're if you're not able to elevate the talent around you at Duke, which again, I think Duke's got a wide receiver that's going to come out next year that I think could get drafted in the top 100. They have some linemen as well that could get drafted kind of high. So again, they're not Clemson. They're not, the Texas Techs of the world with so many weapons just flying around, but they weren't, a bunch of scrubs either. So I look at that and it's like, if you can't elevate Duke, who's not playing these tough defenses every week, how are you going to come to the New York Giants and do that as well with a team that doesn't have, other than Saquon Barkley, a bunch of weapons on their offense anymore? So
yeah, why not just go ahead and sign Alex Smith after he comes off of his broken leg? Because basically your quarterback is not going to make those guys around you better, is what you're saying, right?
No, and that's one reason that I love, what I loved about Dwayne Haskins is those guys at Ohio State, he came in when JT Barrett fell off, when those quarterbacks at Ohio State got drafted, got out of school, and then he made his first start. Last year when an injury happened, he came in, he didn't miss a beat. He came in, picked up right where that offense had left off, and actually in his year in 2018 took it to a whole nother level. He 50 touchdowns in his first year as a starter. Again, it's Ohio State. There's a lot of talent on that offense, but he didn't hold them back, and he probably elevated them from what they played in the years before. So that talent level, he took them to another level. And I think that's something you have to look at and evaluate.
Well, Nate, you played wide receiver, okay? When you played in college. How important is that QB? Did it really matter? Are you always open and you're going to catch anything? Or, hey, come on, a good QB makes your job easier. Which is it?
Steve, I could have both hands tied behind my back. It didn't matter who threw me the damn ball. I'd catch that shit with my dick if I could.
Well, there is that.
Here's what I want to know, Connor. When in the evaluation process, how much did you hold it against Daniel Jones that he was a Duke quarterback as opposed to if he was an Ohio State product like Haskins?
Well, see, I'm not looking at the different levels of schools. So like you're mentioning, Duke quarterback, you kind of don't see him play against that competition. I don't mind it if you're playing at a high level and elevating the guys around you, and your lead. You go to. I know it's a little bit different because of the scheme and coach, but Patrick Mahomes a few years ago I had a first round grade on him. Smaller school. He's not in Alabama. He's not a Clemson quarterback. But he plays at Texas Tech, but he's able to elevate that team. He's able to be productive. And again, their defense is horrible, so they didn't win a lot of games. But on the offensive side of the ball, he was able to do great things as a quarterback. So not a lot for me because I look at the guys, I had a pretty high grade on Mike White last year, who got drafted in the 4th round of the Cowboys. He played at Western Kentucky. So the level of play, level of program you're playing at, I don't put a whole lot of weight in. Obviously, if you're able to dominate at Ohio State, Oklahoma, like Kyler Murray, that's a good sign for your future playing against NFL-style defenses. But at the same time, I look at it, and if you're able to play at a high level and elevate the players around you at these smaller programs, then that probably helps you a little bit more than it would hurt you for me, because I see that you're able to kind of rally the troops and go out and play well against. And that's the thing, when they played against Clemson and Duke, I'm talking about when Duke played against Clemson last year, their offense was absolutely horrendous, and they were behind the whole game, and it was up to Daniel Jones to do something about it. He just wasn't up to that task.
I agree with that, and I like where you're going on that. I mean, basically what you're talking about here is when you get to the NFL, are you going to make the players around you better, which is what you want an elite quarterback to do. And if you're taken in the top 10, aren't you expecting elite quarterback play? I think so. Hey, guys, that's enough for Daniel Jones. I mean, we have to judge the Jersey Giants draft, and they had a huge draft haul, didn't they, Connor?
Yeah, they had a ton of picks, and I think they were one of my worst grades on the draft because they didn't hit on enough of these picks, and they had so much ammo to do so that it felt like they were just throwing bullets at the wind and were missing and swinging and missing on a lot of these picks. And the next guy, who you're going to talk about, I'm sure, is Dexter Lawrence, the defensive lineman out of Clemson. And that pick just doesn't – again, Dexter Lawrence is a good player. He had a early second-round grade for me. So a guy that I feel like they reached on again, picking him at 16th overall. I want to say what it was, 17th overall.
Right, 17. Pick 17, yeah. So actually what I was going to ask you about is something that Nate and I were talking about in the green room. And I have to admit, Nate, this is your observation. So props to you, Nate.
Yeah, for once.
Hey, for once, yeah. Is like basically because of the performance of Gettleman in this NFL draft, Connor, would you agree that now Jerry Jones is the second best GM in the NFC East?
I'd probably name that Stephen Jones instead of Jerry Jones.
Oh, okay, all right. But you would say Jones.
But here's the thing I want to mention to people here. If somehow Jerry Jones were to relinquish ownership of the Dallas Cowboys and he was to take Stephen with him, guess how many teams would hire either of the Joneses as their team's general manager? 0.
I don't know. They've had some good drafts recently, so they might get hired.
That's Will McClay.
But the Browns have a good GM now, so who else would?
Yeah,
it's a valid question. All right, but anyhow, you move down again, and this whole draft for them is a series of reaches according to the way players are rated. They take their first guy, they get their guy, Daniel Jones, but he should have been available later. Dexter Lawrence, a solid player, should have been available later. 130, the third pick of the first round, and they take Deandre Baker. Yay, nay?
He was a guy who I liked, I didn't love. So obviously him not going where I had him, I'm not going to like the pick a lot. He was my 4th rated cornerback, I want to say. Another guy I had a second round grade on. So taking him at 130 is fine because for me, it's not quite as big as a reach as the first pick, and definitely not quite as big a reach as the second pick. But again, they needed corner help. They had the top two corners were still on the board for me: Byron Murphy, Greedy Williams. They kind of went a different direction. That's okay, but he's a guy that just doesn't have the great athleticism. But the reason that I didn't like the Dexter Lawrence pick for them is because they traded away Damon Harrison in the middle of the year last year, who was the best nose tackle in football by far. The best nose tackle in football. You traded him away.
Once he went to the Lions, their run defense, excellent. Matter of fact, he was one of the key players to get them to the playoffs. Yes.
Well, Lions didn't make playoffs, but.
I'm saying to help get them to the. Yeah, I understand they didn't make it, but I mean that was why they made that trade, and they made a nice run, and they started stopping the run once they got him.
Yeah, and he was the Giants' run defense in years past, not this year, because all the turnover they've had has been so good in years past. They're a tough team to run the ball on because of Damon Harrison, because of the Dalvin Tomlinsons and stuff like that of the world, and. They traded away the best nose tackle in football for a fifth-round pick to spend a premium 17th overall pick on another nose tackle who's more athletic, but he's not as good as a run defender. He's a two-down player. So that's terrible team management by a general manager. Whoever made that call, that was just an awful management call because you're getting rid of the best player at his position, drafting a younger version of that, a cheaper version of that, obviously, but he's not as good, and it's one of the least valuable positions on the field for a defense who isn't there to stop the run. They're trying to.
Right.
The NFL teams aren't running the football as much as nowadays as they used to. So putting a 17th overall pick on the field.
Tell that to the Dallas Cowboys who got run over all the way in the playoffs, okay? You got to stop the run. You make your point. But, I mean, all right, from here, they went at the bottom of round 1, and then they go all the way to round 3 before their next pick, and they finally go edge, and they go Oshani Zimenez. Okay. Is this good, or are they, again, reaching a bit?
No, this is probably my favorite pick of theirs. Was it a reach? No, I probably wouldn't say so. He was probably right in that range. For me as well, and he's a guy that he's going to win with technique. He doesn't have great size. He doesn't have great traits as an athletic guy, but he plays with great technique, great hand technique. He has some burst, some explosiveness, and some bend, some flexibility to him as well. So he's more of a technician when rushing the passer, not one of the explosive, just burst, get off guys that wins with speed and strength. He wins with his technique, and I think that's a great way for a small school edge rusher to find success.
Solid third-round pick, right? Solid.
Yeah, that's what I think he's a guy that can come in. He can play on the right side. He can probably get you 4 or 5 sacks as a rotational defensive end in their scheme. And again, I think that you said it. I think that's a solid pick for them with the need at the position, the value they got him at, and his potential as a higher ceiling player because of his length, his technique, and the way he plays the game.
All right, well, in round 4, they come back and they go back to the cornerback position, okay? And they're dealing with Julian Love. Again, 4th round, this early 4th round pick 6. Do you have any love for this pick?
Yeah, no, I like Julian Love. I want to say I had a 3rd round grade on him. So getting him in the 4th, I had a 3rd round grade on him, my 69th overall player. So that was a good little move for them because he's a guy that he's scheme versatile. He can play off coverage, he can play zone, he can play press man, so he can move around. He can do a few different things. He's got decent size, decent length for the position, good ball skills. So he's a guy who can kind of play a few different roles for them. He can cover in the nickel, he can cover on the boundary. But you really like his ball skills and his aggressiveness at the catch point. So I like that for them because I think he can pair up with Janoris Jenkins and Deandre Baker, and they can kind of start to rebuild their secondary with some young talent coming in and versatile guys who can play inside, can play out. So I did like the Julian. Their day 2 picks and this Julian Love pick were my favorite picks for them because I think they kind of blew it on day 1. Is a hate to say, but that's the truth.
A rent night draft, just blow it. Okay, yeah, we get that. And actually, I really like the day 2 picks, the way that they started out as well. And we come back to the 5th round, man, and we're talking top of the 5th. Now it starts getting interesting. This is an area where, I mean, there almost are no reaches from the 5th round down. But you got Ryan Connolly, linebacker, Wisconsin.
Yeah, didn't get that. I think there was a ton of better linebackers still on the board.
I said almost no reaches, but in actuality, wasn't this a reach? Because a lot of people have picked this guy to be a UDFA. Am I wrong?
I say that your no reach starts probably like in the 6th round, because you can still find talented players in that 5th round that can come in and contribute. And I just didn't see it, with him. I didn't watch but a few games of his in the pre-draft process, so I didn't even give him a grade because I didn't watch enough to see him. But I did go back after they drafted him and watch some games, and he would have been a priority free agent for me, and that's 2 rounds too early.
That's called UDFA, man. That's called UDFA. All right. Okay, after that, again in round 5, they had a ton of picks in this draft. I mean, I really love that. That's very New England Patriots, Bill Belichick of them. Darius Slayton, wide receiver, Auburn. Again, 5th round. Is he a 5th round talent?
I think I had him in the 6th, but again, not a reach at that point.
All right.
A guy who I think can be kind of surprising coming in, kind of a late bloomer at Auburn, a guy who can run some routes. He's pretty decent athletic ability, so he's not a stud in anything, but overall a really solid player, a guy who inconsistent with his hands, but a decent route runner, got good size, got good athletic traits. So getting a guy like that in, I wish they would have targeted the wide receiver position earlier. They signed Golden Tate. They still have Sterling Shepard, but other than those 2 guys, none of their receivers are any good. Just putting that pretty nicely. So, I think they should have tried to grab one with either one of those 1st round picks.
At least their kicking net is going to be a lot happier now that OBJ is gone.
True.
Okay. All right, now. Okay, next they came up with Corey Ballantyne. Again, they do realize that Eli Apple or not, they have a lot of problems in the defensive backfield. And I don't think they're done yet there, because this is a draft that was a culture change draft, if you will. But you have Corey Ballantyne here from Washburn.
Yeah, and I like that pick too. I think that's a really solid day 3 pick. A guy who's got good size, very aggressive at the catch point, very aggressive at the line of scrimmage, good run defender, had a really good week at the Senior Bowl as one of the top small school guys there. So I like that pick for them because he adds some size, he adds some athleticism, adds some ball skills to that secondary. And they really targeted the secondary, as you can see, with Julian Love, DeAndre Baker, and then, Corey Ballantyne. So that's 3, corners who should make their 56 or 53-man roster. And that's a nice addition to add to a team who really needed help in the secondary.
Yeah, Gettleman seems to have a good eye for cornerbacks, for DBs overall. He did a good job with that down in the Carolinas. But quarterback play, he inherited a QB down there, okay?
Yeah.
It's interesting to see how that turns out. You had over 300 guys on your list, your top 100, but not all of those guys got drafted, and there was guys that got drafted you didn't have covered. What about Christopher Slayton, defensive tackle, Syracuse?
Yep, guy I liked is a day 3 guy. 3 technique. They run a different scheme and defense than they had the years in the past. So he should get some reps as a 3 technique under tackle that can get up the field, rush the passer. Undersized guy. I think he came in about 6'2", and then he came in a little light as well. So he's an undersized pass rusher that can get up the field and get after the quarterback. Not one of my favorite day 3 pass rushers from the interior, but he's kind of in that mid-level of guys that I really liked as a day 3 pick for the interior defensive lineman.
That's pretty sexy overall, and that's a heck of a draft haul in just pure numbers. But they're guys all over the chart, and when I look at what they drafted, I mean, normally you want guys, in tiers, you want a certain number of tier 1 products, tier 2 products, tier 3 products. They seem to jump down and draft guys from the tier 2 and tier 3 right away. And I'm just not seeing the really exciting picks. But overall, I think it's a solid draft, not an exciting draft. What's your take?
I can't even give it a solid draft because of the first round. I mean, you had 3 first-round picks and didn't add a first-round player. To me, you added a
out of those 3 first-round picks, which of those guys are going to start for him this year? Probably 2, right?
Yeah, they'll start, but I just don't see them being different. Again, you have a 2-down nose tackle who
I disagree about being difference makers. When you have a nose tackle that's a rookie and not that good, and a cornerback that's a rookie and that's not good, it's going to be a difference maker, just not the way that you would like it to be.
Well, again, I don't want you to think that I'm saying these players aren't good, because Dexter Lawrence is my 30-20. Let me see here. Bad radio. Dexter Lawrence was my 32nd ranked player, and then Deandre Baker was my bad radio.
Okay, so like basically at the end of the day here, Connor, what we're talking about, and now this is a Jimmy Johnson, the ex-GM / coach of the Cowboys. He didn't care about draft value. He wanted his guys.
Yeah, and that's what it came down to. Daniel Jones was Dave Gettleman's guy. Dexter Lawrence, probably Dave Gettleman's guy. And then Deandre Baker, also probably Dave Gettleman's guy. And Deandre Baker was my 29th ranked overall player. They took him at 30. That's good value there. Wasn't my top ranked corner. I think they could have gotten a better corner. But again, good value in my opinion. Dexter Lawrence was my 33rd ranked player. They got him at 17. That's about a half a round of a reach. And then again, my dislike for that. Are
you saying that's a reach around? Is that what you're just calling it?
Well, my dislike for that pick comes in with what they did with Damon Harris, the best nose tackle in the league, at the midpoint of the year.
And you have to tie that all together, because that is part of it. So when you're judging the draft, okay, I mean, they score low. I don't see any other way to score it. But if these players hit, then it doesn't matter, does it?
Well, no, and this, all of this stuff we're doing now is all just – it means something, in my opinion, because we spend the time, the effort to look at these guys and talk about them.
Draft value is critical. I mean, come on. I mean, like the Dallas Cowboys a few years ago decided to draft a certain cornerback out of LSU without really scouting him. They traded up and got him at pick number 6. That really worked out well. Everybody was like, what a great pick. What a great thing. He didn't even get a second contract with him, did he?
I think he signed like a 1 year. Yeah, but nothing that you would have hoped for.
He signed a 1 year. You're right. You're right.
But again, nothing you would have hoped for after trading, up to get him and sitting on the value. And again, I look at it as you have to look at this from a broad standpoint, and you have to look at the Dexter Lawrence thing is just a perfect thing to me. Is if they needed a nose tackle, they've been dying for years to get a guy in to stop the run, to break down Ezekiel Elliott, to break down the Darius Geises, Adrian Petersons of the world. Fine, and spend that pick, but you had the best at the position. Yeah, he was making a little bit of money. He was getting up there in age.
It was affordable, though. It was affordable.
Exactly. It was affordable. He was still literally the best at the position, so you weren't seeing a decline. You traded him away for the linebacker out of Wisconsin, who's probably not even going to make your team, and you drafted a younger guy that's filling the same role, just not as good. So I don't know, man. That pick is just kind of – if they hadn't had Damon Harrison and they hadn't traded him away, I'd probably like it more, but – I don't understand why they would have done that. All
right. I see, and I have to agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think a lot of people are judging the Giants draft a little too harshly, but just a little. Just a little. I mean, I like some of the guys. I really do. Like you said, I mean, they're talented guys, but it's just where they were taken. It's really weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, again, I love the, Shane Zimenez pick. I love the Julian Love pick, like the Deandre Baker pick. Don't understand the Dexter Lawrence pick, but he's still a good player. So they added good players, but they needed, in my opinion, I don't think Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate is enough to make up for Odell Beckham Jr.
Unless they're turning into just a ground-centric team, I mean, which is going to be weird. Which, hey, I'm sure that there's a certain GM down in Jacksonville that would probably love that approach. Okay, Coughlin, he's into that. All right, well, that's it. We have the draft, we have the thing. We're going to be back next week. As we come back, Connor, talk to people a little bit about how they can find you on social media and what you're going to be doing and writing about as we come up and get into the new NFL draft season.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Connor NFL Draft. That's CONNOR NFL Draft. And as rookie minicamps start talking, we're going to be breaking down a lot of these guys, who's impressing, who's disappointing, and then when training camps get started, we're really going to look back at the rookie class and kind of see who's doing what, track them through the preseason, and then of course as a regular season, we're going to keep an eye on these guys, figure out who's disappointing, who's playing well, who's adding to that value that we talked about, kind of who's valuing out as good draft picks, who's valuing out as great draft picks, and who's valuing out as poor draft picks. So that's going to be something that we track this year and for many years to come, as these grades don't really mean anything until the third or fourth year of these guys' contracts.
All right, Connor, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here, sir. And for those wondering, Nate Dowdy, you can find him on Twitter at No Remorse Sports, just like it sounds. He will be back as soon as we manage to give him a laptop that has more than 20 minutes power. We'll work on that little snafu there. And for everyone, we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here. And until next time, listen like you play with intensity.